Hello. Well, I listened to the minister, and I just think it's reckless that he is willing to choose disruption and chaos and more uncertainty for parents and students rather than doing the hard work of sitting at the negotiating table through a mediator to come to a negotiated settlement. There is no reason that this minister should not be at the bargaining table right now. Instead, they are jamming through on a fast track legislation. CUPE and its members are following the Act, the Education Act, in terms of steps to bargaining. The minister is the one that has leapfrogged that process with a preemptive move with this bully bill 28. And it is this minister and the Ford government that is accountable and responsible for what is about to happen should they not return to the table and get a settlement.
The education minister has threatened that they are going to impose fines on frontline education workers. Practically speaking, is that feasible? 55,000 education support workers, finding them all $4,000 per day. Is that something that you believe can actually work?
The minister has been drafting this bill for weeks, and I believe he said yesterday that he had a final draft on October 17th. So how he's going to implement it, I'm sure he has thought that through. CUPE alone will be sanctioned at $500,000 a day for any strike action. The threat of strike does not mean that a labor union is going to do a full walkout strike. It's the minister that has preempted this process with his aggressive Bill 28. This is really created by his own making and his own hands.
That may be, but they are within their legal rights to pass this legislation, and what QB is planning to do tomorrow is illegal. Are you supporting that for them to go on an illegal strike?
The right to strike and the right to collectively bargain is constitutionally protected. It is this minister and the Ford government that, for the third time, has used the notwithstanding clause. The first time it was a threat, the second time they followed through, and they're using it now as if it's easy to do. Yet it is diminishing the rights of all Canadians. And it should not be used in this manner to legislate away constitutionally protected rights to collectively bargain. This is not just about CUPE. This is about all workers and having that opportunity to bargain in a free and fair manner. That's what's being threatened today. I stood here and I heard the minister threaten workers to use every tool, 55,000 education workers who care for the most vulnerable students in our system, our EAs, our ECEs, our school secretaries, our custodians, people who keep students safe out in the yard. That's who they're threatening. These are valuable education workers, and he's creating a very hostile environment, one that's laced with threats.
Mitzie, when you were education minister, did you feel that 2.5% a year would have been an appropriate amount for a frontline education support worker?
You know, the context and the times are different in terms of these negotiations. We are seeing soaring inflations. Food costs alone have gone up by 10.3%. Many of these workers are struggling. 25% of them are part-time, temporary, and casual workers who don't even have benefit coverage or that security of their job. And so
Union members are saying that, for the last 10, 11 years, their wages haven't really kept up with inflation and they're at historical lows.
I understand that, but the times are different.
But does the Ontario Liberals take any responsibility for where we are today, that they are asking for 11% because your party would have denied them all that money?
After 4 years, the Ford government is now in its 5th year. It has to start taking some responsibility. This is their 2nd contract that they are negotiating, and it's now dissolved into the use of the notwithstanding clause rather than sitting at the table until past the 11th hour to get a deal. Imagine walking away from the table and these mediation talks have broken down because the government has refused to show up. I believe that's unacceptable. The government has a $2.1 billion surplus, and the FAO has projected that out to 5 years. Over 5 years, they're going to be cutting $6 billion from the education system rather than investing it in education. So this is not a government that has prioritized public education. The minister talks about, students having experienced disruption and that he can't tolerate 1 day of disruption. Well, this is a government that presided over 27 weeks of disruption. So, why not invest in our education system? Why not come to the table and negotiate a deal, whatever that may be? The mediator has said that these two parties are too far apart to even continue talks. Well, that says to me that the minister has not been serious about coming to a negotiated settlement versus imposing a legislative one using the notwithstanding clause and taking away constitutional rights of these members to bargain freely.
But you've negotiated contracts before. I mean, what do you think both sides could have done differently? Like, did QP come out too strong initially with the 11%, and then the government shot back?
I believe that that both sides have responsibility for the bargaining environment. I thought it was poisoned from the very beginning when the minister started, talking in the media about what was discussed at the negotiating table. The mediator tried to put a cap on that by ensuring that there is no bargaining in the media. What happens at the table stays at the negotiating table. That's the environment that you create, but that needs to have a trust associated with it. And it was clear that this environment was poisoned from the very beginning. I felt that the minister was very aggressive, seeking to divide parents and education workers right from the outset, and nobody wants a strike. I don't believe that QP and its members want to strike, and they don't want to be in the classroom and in the schools where they choose to be and they choose to work. They feel that they have to do this because they're not being treated fairly by this government.
Do you think it's okay if they stay off the job all next week as well, or indefinitely until they get a negotiated deal?
Well, it is unclear to me where this is going. The minister has, he's rushing right now to pass preemptive legislation before the strike deadline. There is not a strike right now. He is creating the environment that is poisoned, and that is, where education workers feel that they have to go to the picket line. They have to protest in order to be heard. And, I know that they were waiting for the minister all day today at the bargaining table, and they didn't show up. The government did not show up. Instead, they're here forcing through legislation.
What would you support if it drags on? Would you keep supporting QP? Is there a point where kids should be back? Or
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. There is a point where kids should be back. We don't want to put the education year at risk for students, and that should be something that is being carefully monitored in terms of any disruption on the learning for students, for sure.
Okay, no one else? Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you, everyone.